Morris Katz was actually doing a panel discussion with David Axelrod, who was mentor to the Pod Save America bros. I'd call him the Podfather. But yeah. Anyway, the whole conversation that they had there was really telling.
The controversial tattoo.
Yes.
That was Nazi iconography or whatever, or
Adjacent.
Nazi adjacent, yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't even know where to start there other than Nazi adjacent. Welcome back to Concepts of a Pod. I know it's been a bit since our last episode, and we appreciate your patience as we've been working on some really exciting new things that we'll be sharing with you in the coming months.
And of course, we want to say thank you so much for all of your support through everything that we have been doing and will continue to do. Like Jordan said, we're working on a lot of new technology. We have some very, very exciting things to announce very, very soon. And we both, for transparency, took a very short break, our like one vacation of the year. So that's why we were gone for a couple of weeks, but we're back, we're refreshed and ready to keep delivering great things to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much to all of you for your patience, your feedback, your input. And I know it's a tough time for Democrats right now, too, with all of the autopsy drama, which we'll get into. And we'll be starting out the rollout of our next round of technology with a short report on what supporters like you think about everything the autopsy did or didn't cover. But before we get into that, I think we need to talk about the breaking news of the day in our party, which is the nightmare in the Maine primary.
Oh no, Graham Platner's making the news again. Big surprise.
Yeah, this time, after somehow he managed to surge in the polls off the headlines of a Nazi tattoo and some Reddit posts from a long time ago, because people understand that he may have grown up and changed. But we learned from the Wall Street Journal's reporting that a couple months ago, Graham Platner's wife, who, by the way, they got married in 2023. So
very recent. Very, very recent. 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah, not talking about old things here, but apparently she flagged to the campaign manager that he was sexting at least 6 women on the messaging app Kik, which I don't know if anyone knows is sometimes used for messaging people who are too young to have cell phones.
Don't let your kids go on messaging platforms or game platforms that are just open-ended and you can talk to anybody. Kik is another version of that.
Yeah, just completely unmoderated messaging with anybody. What could possibly go wrong? But yeah, more than that, I'm interested in how the Wall Street Journal got this information, which was interesting. The former chief of staff, I believe, for the Platner campaign, who had quit when the Nazi tattoo and Reddit post scandals were surfacing. It turns out that Graham Platner's wife had actually told her that this may be something they need to look out for. And of course, once she left, she told the Wall Street Journal on background, and it became something they needed to look out for. But all of that to say, we can get into the staffing drama and consultant drama behind all of that, but a lot more bad news to come from Graham Platner.
I saw a tweet online this weekend I thought was really funny and kind of like was a good, in a nutshell for Graham Platner's campaign, that the former campaign manager had so much oppo on Platner and only decided to leak the least shocking oppo while they were actually on the campaign. Which we, obviously, like you said, people can grow and change, but when something bad gets discovered about you again online, you should have a better response to things. This situation, every situation, how he's responded to all of his scandals so far reminds me of the YouTubers who they got caught when they were younger or whatever, saying the N-word online or being racist or homophobic or fatphobic online. And they're sitting in front of the camera going, I'm so sorry for what I said. And they're cutting the clips. You can tell that they're putting water in their eyes to make it look like they're crying. Mm-hmm. That is how this feels. That is how this feels. If you know, you know.
Yeah. No. And the reaction online is just something else entirely, given, I mean, first of all, this primary is not over, but you've got leftists, and I mean a lot of leftist men and pod bros saying that all of a sudden if you don't support this guy, then you don't believe in vote blue no matter who, which I guess accountability only applies to people who aren't leftist white men.
Well, vote blue no matter who, unless, you don't like them. I just want to bring that up about the the 2024 election. But, things don't matter until they impact you personally. That is how a lot of politics works. And you've heard me say this before. I care a lot about intersectionality. And this is one of the bigger criticisms I have of the farther left is that they're not just always fighting for things to be better for everyone. They still only do things and say things when it's convenient for them or that they need it or that it's personally impacted them.
Yeah, and it's also like, I can't prove it yet, but it very much feels like they are trying to sabotage the Democratic Party. And
there's multiple ways to prove it, but continue.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was being generous and avoiding libel lawsuits. But let's take a step back to this Kick account, which apparently, by the way, and I can't confirm he still uses it, but unfortunately I can confirm, as of this morning when we're recording this on June 1st of 2026, that Kick account is still active with his shirtless selfie, which, by the way, I will point out, he knew to cover up the Nazi tattoo with the phone. The Nazi tattoo, he claimed he didn't know what it was, but
I'd really like to go a day without seeing this man's nipples on my feed. Like every day that I open my phone, he's just there because of some news scandal revolving around how gross he used to be. Well, yeah, maybe still is, but
me too. And not to mention that, but I think what concerns me more, unfortunately, is the fact that I discovered this Kick account is still active from the NRSC's research team. And I'm sorry.
They actually did research that was relevant and true.
And unfortunately, spot on. And I can't understand how these strategists who claim that we need to win the Senate, I mean, yes, we do need to win the Senate and can't stand Susan Collins. Either she's going to win again because of this nightmare, or we do flip that seat and it costs us 10 more seats in the next 20 years as the NRSC tags every Democrat with the stupid stuff Graham Platner said.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about this in a couple of episodes about how we don't want to stop people or prohibit people from running for office. But if you are going to run for office and you know that there's things you've done in the past or such, I mean, you don't have to go online and air out all of your scandals and your grievances, before you announce. But if you got to let your staff know about things that like, hey, I did some things that I'm not proud of in the past. Here's what they are. When they come out, we'll deal with them as is. Or, you decided not to share something and it does come out. Well, your first response should not be forcing your wife to make a video apologizing for it, but that you should be taking accountability for it, because everyone has we have all said things that we probably regret in the past. And, you learn about what's right and what's wrong. And you apologize for it. And you learn that that's not right to say. But there's some people, because we can see, that took it way further than that and are still refusing to take accountability. And like I said, made it worse that he made his wife make a video apologizing for him.
Right. And a cut together ad from him. But his wife.
What was an ad?
There was both. Actually, the ad may have been about the Reddit posts. Never mind.
Still.
Yeah, whatever. Point being that he can't record the direct camera apology himself, but he has his wife do it. And I want to take an aside to, first of all, thank my wife for all of her support of my endeavors working on everything I do for the Democratic Party and our supporters full time, including having to listen in the background as I'm yapping about politics on this podcast. And part of that, though, is that I understand we have a very public audience and I respect her privacy and leave her out of it. And I couldn't even imagine if I screwed up that bad. First of all, I couldn't even imagine screwing up that bad. But if I screwed something up, because I'm not perfect, I could not imagine asking her to get on a direct-to-camera recording and cover me for what I did. I mean, could you imagine asking your partner that?
Nope. Nope. I'm very thankful actually that I have a partner who is not in politics,
Same.
so that so that when I come home at the end of the day, that my partner's role in my political life now and when and if I choose to run for office will always be that when I come home, I have a support system outside of my job. Because when you work in politics, and especially if you run for office, the moment that you leave the house or you open up your phone, you have to be aware of everything you say and be
Mm-hmm.
careful of everything you do. But at home, inside the privacy of your home, it doesn't have to be about any of that. So I'm very thankful that, if I ask my partner to show up to an event that's important to me, he'll show up. But I'm glad that he's not there working with me every single minute of every single day on this. But also, if there were to be something that would come out about me or something to do with this that was bad, my first response wouldn't be, oh my gosh, partner, you need to go and talk about this online and defend me. No, we would take responsibility for whatever it was and make sure that we are protecting the privacy of our partners because they support us, but they don't want to be online. And that is their right. And that is our right,
Yeah, and I mean, from everything I gathered, and I'm actually going to play this clip that Platner had his wife record in a sec, because I think you should all see it, but
At least part of it.
yeah. One thing I noticed was that it seems, from all intents and purposes, like she's a pretty private person too, and it seems like she feels like she had to do this, not that she wanted to. But I think that's all we'll say on this for now before you, the viewers, actually get a chance to see it.
Hey everyone, it's Amy. I wanted to make a statement today in response to a couple of news articles that are out there about my marriage to Graham. If anybody knows me and Graham personally, you know that we got married in 2023 and we love each other deeply. So it makes me really angry, disappointed, and I find it really shameful that there's a group of media outlets and people who are willing to spread gossip instead of talking about real issues that Graham is running on, like healthcare and education and childcare. I'm walking up and down my road right now, and this is like my 20th take. This is very hard to do, but I just really wanted to make sure that everyone knows that Graham and I have a great marriage. Being married is hard. Being newly married is hard. Being newly married and going through infertility is hard. Being newly married, going through infertility, and a Senate campaign is hard. I don't even know if I have the right words to describe what we've been going through, but our marriage counselor helps. My personal counselor helps. Graham's personal counselor helps. And we work on our mental health every day. No marriage is perfect, and I don't want a perfect marriage. I want my marriage, and I want to be married to Graham. I knew the man that I married had been through an immense amount of violent, active combat, and he's been in therapy for years. I admire the fuck out of him. So when there are news articles about our marriage, it's just extra shitty. Can I say that online? I hope I can. It's extra shitty because people in Maine want affordable gas. They want to be able to see their doctor when they're sick. They want to be able to send their kids to a nice school, a nice daycare facility, and raise families the way that they want to. And I don't normally make public statements, but it's really important for me to tell all of you out there, especially people who are voting in Maine, that I think it's shameful behavior to spend time and energy and resources on negative ads and negative stories on Graham when all he's trying to do is improve the lives of people who work for a living.
I've got a few thoughts here. I obviously agree with her that people should not be digging into their personal lives. And I want to make sure that this comes off in the right way. The campaign should not have made this woman, who has gone through so much recently with infertility and a miscarriage and having to see all these horrible things about her husband come out, go online and make a video. She could have very well wanted to do this.
Didn't feel like it to me.
It does not feel like she wanted to. And those are just our guesses and opinions from what we're seeing. So this is, we don't know this for real. But on the other hand, this sounds a lot like a lot of the Republicans that we have seen, after they've had a sex scandal, or we found out that they got a hooker pregnant and had to travel to a blue state to get them an abortion.
You know what?
That's what this is turning into. And I believe in horseshoe theory. So I believe that the extremes are closer together than the middle. But anyways, going back to the vote blue no matter who, it only matters when it impacts your life directly. And Fight Agency right now is really proving that they don't actually care a whole lot about, the sanctity of what being a Democrat means or the Democratic Party. They just care about getting people who are, not Republicans elected. And I want to make that clear that we're not supporting Republicans. We are not voting for Republicans. I want to make that clear. But being just solely not Republican is not enough to be a good politician or to be a good candidate to put up for office.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, I'm glad you mentioned Fight Agency there, because I think one of the probably least notable but most telling parts of that clip was the fact that what she says she was on her 20th take, which means someone gave her a script for this.
Or that the other 19 times she recorded it, it wasn't right, and they made her do it again. And you could obviously tell that she's upset. Like, you can look at her eyes, you can tell that she's upset about everything that's been going on. She's getting the short end of the stick of having to do whatever the campaign needs, and having to apologize and repent for this, publicly to everybody to convince them to vote for her husband, who's been a very shitty person in a lot of his life, recently and in the past.
I apologize in advance for how crude this joke is going to be, but if Graham Platner can have a Nazi tattoo and run for Senate, I think I can say, do you think that Morris Katz was standing right behind her when she was filming this, or do you think they sent her out to the road and told her she could come back when she had a good take?
Or it could have been both. Could have been both, but I guarantee it was the second one.
Sorry.
Yeah, you can come back inside once you've done what we want. We've seen this, too, from Republican candidates and their wives.
Yeah. I just want to point out, too, that she's not the only woman who's been forced to take the heat for this. And Morris Katz, very personally, is going after this chief of staff. I don't know if you saw, she posted actually recently that he had threatened to go after her and name her publicly if she didn't call the Wall Street Journal and retract the story. So she just came out and said that, yeah, I called them on background to tell them about this a while ago. They called me out of courtesy, and once they had reached out, he demanded I retract my comments, and so I had to go on the record myself to get ahead of the fact that he threatened that he was going to lie to the press about me.
If you don't know who Morris Katz is, he's the head of Fight Agency.
Oh, yeah, and if you don't know who Fight Agency is, they first came on the scene when they put the Bernie Sanders campaign on the map and got them so riled up that they wouldn't vote for Hillary and put us in this mess in the first place.
AOC and
hey, I'll give them AOC.
And
AOC.
I'm just Fetterman. I'm just naming the other people that they've worked with. Not in a bad light, just listing them off. That's all.
Oh yeah. Point being, they are, if not an insider powerhouse, I would call them the outsider powerhouse. And we should actually have a much larger conversation about how they've built this social media industrial complex where they can take somebody they've plucked out of nowhere, regardless of how problematic, put him on the right podcasts and with the right outlets that they all have greased, I'm sure. Some random oyster farmer from Maine can get all the attention he wants if he just says what they want.
What problem do you have with oysters? Like, no, it's that he has a Nazi tattoo and recently has been sexting women. That's what we have a problem with. Not that he's an oyster farmer. I don't like oysters, though, I'll be honest.
Oh,
So I do
okay.
have a problem with oysters, but we don't need
Yeah.
to take it out on the oysters.
Fair enough. But I think a bigger point to this, though, is the way that Morris Katz is able to, through the pretty impressive network he's built, kind of take someone out of obscurity and make them the face of the progressive movement. And I don't know whether it's organic traction, like the theory of critical mass, or how many of them are being paid. Cough, cough, Annie Wu 22 LLC. But I don't think there's any better way to understand this, though, than to hear it from Morris Katz himself. And to be fair, this was after the Reddit posts, but before the most recent story. Morris Katz was actually doing a panel discussion with David Axelrod. If you don't know who he is, he was an advisor to President Obama, credited with helping get him elected, mentor to the Pod Save America bros, and frequent guest. I'd call him the Podfather. But yeah. Anyway, it was about an hour-long discussion. The headline was about the success that Katz had with Mamdani, but Axelrod asked him about Platner as well. And I think the whole conversation that they had there was really telling. So I'm going to show it to you here, and then we can discuss more once we have his voice in the context of what came before it.
Graham, similar to Zoran, I think is a unique talent. And we found, the most popular message was, I'm a working person who knows working people are being screwed. And people are like, hell yeah, it'd be nice to have someone who knows what it's like in Washington. Only 2% of Congress is from the working class. And Graham has a bio that's like uniquely suited for that argument.
The party in Washington has recruited and got behind the governor, Janet Mills, there. But he went out, he took a big lead in that primary. She then went after him because there were things in his background that were to be gone after, and this is one of them. This is the ad she ran.
Did you know Graham Platner wrote that women worried about rape need to, quote,
not get so up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to.
It's disgusting.
Platner wrote to avoid rape, women should, quote,
act like an adult for sake.
Graham Platner, seriously. Just no way I could vote for you. No.
Graham Platner, the closer you look, the worse it gets.
We should point out that that last shot also featured, I guess, the controversial tattoo.
Yes.
That was Nazi iconography or whatever, or
Adjacent.
Nazi adjacent, yeah. Quite a neighborhood. But let's look at your response.
If I saw these ads, I'd have questions. These are words and statements I abhor from a time in my life when I was struggling deeply after returning from war. These words are not who I am. So, Maine, I'm asking you not to judge me for the worst thing I said on the internet on my worst day 14 years ago, but who I am today.
I'm sorry. I don't even know where to start there other than Nazi adjacent.
I love that the left has no issues calling out racism when it's racism, except when we start getting into anti-Semitism or anti-Jew bigotry, that all of a sudden it's Nazi adjacent, and there's, laughs because they're uncomfortable because they're not willing to clock it for what it is.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I would understand if, or not I would understand, I would almost understand if there were something really compelling about this guy, if he had done something truly impressive, if he had some kind of qualifications that made him the best person to be one of 100 U.S. senators representing a country of 300 million. But from what I understand about this guy, first of all, even though Morris Katz says he's working class, and he says he's working class. I mean, I think we've mentioned this on this podcast before, but Graham Platner attended one of the most elite private boarding schools in the country. He had an elite education, which is why he's so good at spewing the elite talking points of guys like Morris Katz, who are, by the way, the real target audience of these candidates. It's not true working class people. It is the downwardly mobile kids of upper middle class and, I'm going to say, to lower 1%, people who, quite frankly, lived the American dream for themselves. I mean, maybe are hoarding too much of the wealth for themselves, but are also teaching their kids that you got to work hard and you got to do something to get ahead in this world. And they're just upset that what they were handed in their childhood isn't being handed to them now. And I mean, Graham Platner honestly is the perfect representation of the downwardly mobile.
Yeah, you clocked it. I don't have anything else to add to that. It's frustrating to see when we talk about people who pose for this or that or say that they were poor growing up or that they weren't rich growing up. Like I don't know. It feels that rich calculated everything gets handed to you. That his apology for those Reddit posts, I would have preferred him to do a direct to camera through his phone, iPhone video, saying that he was sorry for these things versus putting together a whole scripted ad of him sitting in a chair in a room alone, staring at the camera saying, "You need to know who I am now." No, that's not genuine. I think that we have forgotten what apologies are supposed to look like and what they're supposed to be, and that apologies are supposed to be genuine. And most things you say should be genuine, but we've forgotten what that is and what that means. And we've really lost the plot at this point of saying sorry in a very scripted, polished, professionally filmed and edited ad for saying that, women should have known better to not get raped.
Yeah. I mean, yes to all of those things, but beyond the apology, beyond the scandal, beyond even Graham Platner, I think there's a larger conversation to be had here, and I think Morris Katz is kind of the connecting thread to it. But the fact that publicity, attention, airwaves, none of that is free, and even though when you launch a political campaign, you may be able to delay your invoices so it looks like you raised the money before you spent it. Raising a massive amount of money on a campaign launch is not free. Somebody fronted the money for it, knowing they would make it back because they have a strategy. That's someone being Morris Katz. And I mean, I hate to say, but Donald Trump does a very similar thing where the difference is with the progressives, they cosplay the working class as they are. Trump, on the other hand, cosplays what I hate to say what a lot of rural working class men would become if they won the lottery, which is they'd buy the biggest, fanciest jet and the biggest, fanciest gold apartment building. And that's how he plays to that fantasy. But whichever side you're on, the extremes that seem to do well on social media, what they play to at its core really is the frustration that everyday people, whether it's people who are failing to compete in a white-collar job market that's become much more brutal than it should be, or the working class who were forgotten a long time ago in this country.
This is something, it may be very controversial, but I think that, there's a balance between electing someone who looks like you and is fighting for you and electing someone who can do the job. Politicians and electeds, they're not everyday people. Like, I don't think that most people fully understand what it's like to work in politics, like what Jordan and I do. This is not a 9 to 5. This is like, sometimes I work 90 to 100 hours a week, and I'm totally fine with it. I have no issues with it. I am always on call. I'm never like off the clock. Even when I'm taking a moment, to scroll through Twitter, I'm still looking at everything going, that no normal person does that. Everything I see in my head, it morphs into something to do with politics to try and push to be better. Like, I think we've talked about, for example, the name of our organization, New Digital Now. That is a joke based off of, Veet Mussolini Now, concepts of a pod. That is a joke and a spoof off of when Donald Trump said that he had concepts of a plan. Like, there's so many little subtle things. And I'm going to tell you right now, in this shot, there's so many other subtle things that people are not aware about that we have staged and put out to try and get people to notice and to think about. No normal person does that, but people who work in politics and electeds, that's what they do. They have to take anything and spin it into something that other people will understand, but they have to put it out in so many different paths and avenues so that every type of person understands.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what the other little like secrets are in here, but like if you watch the whole episode, you can put things together and figure out the little, I don't know, jokes, Easter eggs, whatever you want to call it. That's what politicians do. They have to put things out to people in all sorts of different ways and different avenues to try and get as much of the group collective as they can. Politicians are not normal people, but they can appeal to normal people if they know how to, and they're not acting like elite rich jackasses like Graham Platner kind of is.
Yeah, not just Graham Platner, though, and the establishment, too. And I think that's part of the problem because, I mean, this debate about democracy versus representation went back to the founding fathers. I mean, when the United States was formed and we're rapidly approaching the 250th year anniversary of a true groundbreaking revolution in the way government works.
Yeah.
But I mean, originally, senators weren't elected by the people. The senators were elected by the state legislatures. The House was the people's house, and because you had more members, one crazy was less of a big deal. Like, we have a couple crazies in the House now, but I think it's actually a poignant thing to look back on now with Platner potentially becoming a U.S. senator that, I mean, not saying people shouldn't necessarily have the right to pick their senators, but there is a trade-off between representation and direct democracy because people who work in politics and the people we elect to represent us, quite frankly, we elect them to care about our problems so we can go about our lives. They solve the problems so we don't have to think about them. And the fact that people like Donald Trump, Graham Platner are so appealing across the aisle, I think more than anything is a representation of the fact that the establishment system is failing. I mean,
it's made people so polarized. Like you're going to hate me for saying this, but you're going to hate me so much, but there's a valid point to it, I promise. Whenever I want to see what is really appealing to a lot of the masses, I will go and see who Joe Rogan has spoken to recently on his podcast and how people reacted to it. James Tallarico was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Joe Rogan was like, "We need more people like you." To James Tallarico.
Why would I hate you for saying that?
Because I'm giving Joe Rogan a small amount of praise here.
By the
Joe
way,
Rogan is willing. I don't like him, but he's one of the few people that is still willing to sit and give people an equal chance and talk to them, just like he talks to everybody else. And he pushes them and asks them, hard-hitting questions. And I watched part of Joe Rogan's interview with James Tallarico, and I really appreciated a lot of it. That's not me endorsing saying go watch it or whatever, but James Tallarico is someone who is also appealing to a lot of people, but the way that he's catching waves and wind is completely different than how Donald Trump and Graham Platner are.
Yeah. Okay, couple things on that. First of all, you're going to hate me for this even more. Joe Rogan is not Nick Fuentes or Charlie Kirk. Joe Rogan runs an apolitical show. He interviews whoever people care about. And if he is interviewing a politician, that's when you take notice, because that means that that person is breaking the containment of...
I believe Joe Rogan has interviewed more Democratic politicians than Republican politicians.
Probably, and probably a lot of local people, too, who were working on things he cared about. But second to that, though, it's interesting that we talk about Tallarico as the one who's breaking through there, because Tallarico does not play the lowest common denominator sling in the mud model. And quite frankly, I think we actually litigated that issue pretty well in the Texas primary, because I think Jasmine Crockett was that candidate who was slinging the mud a little more. And I think the primary voters decided they don't want that. And I think what would be an interesting outcome is if Tallarico wins and Platner loses, but I'm not going to predict.
We'll see how all that ends up. But I also, again, I want to go back to the point I made about when we reach out to people, when politicians reach out to people, you have to reach out to so many different kinds of people and, have the same message go out in completely different avenues. And I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah.
That not everyone takes in the information the same way. I had a very interesting conversation yesterday with an elected that I work with about how people take in the news. And we were talking about how, this is a short example about how people take in the news. And I realized that, a long story short, we got into like how a lot of Gen Z and young people become distrustful of mainstream news sources. I was like, oh my gosh, every time that I see a news article, I go look at Twitter or TikTok first to see what's going on and not look at other news sources, because I had in my head inherently, I didn't realize I had accidentally trained myself to not trust the news.
Wow.
And it was a very like eye-opening moment. And also, people working in politics are not normal in that sense because you're extra hyper aware. And I was able in that moment to recognize that I don't trust mainstream news sources as much as I used to and as much as I should. And I trust TikTok and Twitter more. That my fact checking for news sources is TikTok and Twitter, which that's a conversation.
Scary.
That's a conversation for another time. But also, so on that note, TikTok and Twitter are they're not always as wrong. Like sometimes they give you more information than the news does. But that's a conversation for another time. Otherwise, we're going to big tangent. But the different news avenue, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and the news sources, like we'll say, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN, Fox, they all give, and even between all those news sources, they give the same information out in completely different ways, and everyone gets the information, but then they're receiving it and internalizing it and processing it in different ways. And so there's pros and cons to all of this. But anyways, that's a long tangent to get back into how, I don't know, people need to do better and make sure they understand what they're getting into and what they're, taking in all at the same time.
Here's the thing, though. The social media sites, they're just aggregators of content, like you said, and you're right. It's the same information being presented in different ways, and the difference is on social media, you have content from influencers, creators, people with opinions mixed in with the news, and I think that's what you want to see. You want to see the news in context of the opinions of those people you trust. And what's scary is that you have these big tech companies whose algorithms are deciding what goes next to what, but I think what really lays the groundwork for all of this is a lack of trust in the establishment, because people used to believe in figures like, Kennedy, Clinton, Reagan, and notice I span both sides of the aisle here to point to people who were able to inspire the...
Ronald Reagan won every state except for Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan was wildly popular. People loved him. He spoke to people.
Yeah, and this is really not about party here, because, again, we just praised Ronald Reagan, and I don't agree with much of
it's not praising. It's just showing how popular he was.
Yeah, no, exactly. But the point here is that people don't trust the establishment anymore, and it's because in a world where people can comment, share, like, and have their voices heard more than ever, or at least think they're being heard by the world and are shouting into a void, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party before it, they failed 10 years ago and lost their entire party because of it, but the Democratic Party is not able to listen to the voices of the people who power it and turn that into action that aligns with what they think, which is what Morris Katz has been able to do. He's been able to analyze social media comments in real time and put together networks of activists and politicians who can cater to those concerns. But the DNC, meanwhile, not to drag that news cycle from hell back into the limelight, but they just got through a 192-page autopsy that the experts at the DNC couldn't even finish. It was 192 pages, but it didn't even have a conclusion.
This is like when you have a paper due on Friday and you start working on it on Thursday night.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened here.
That is what the autopsy is.
Yeah, no, and I think it says a lot, too, that people were so concerned that there was this grand conspiracy that the DNC was hiding whatever the real reason they failed was, when in reality they just straight up didn't do the work. And even Harris deputy campaign manager Rob Flaherty, who was Biden's digital director, published an 11,000-word piece on what he told the autopsy team and what he thought went wrong. He was the one running direct response, and he didn't even mention what the supporters had to say. The people he was emailing, texting, he mentioned that they kept the lights on and said they, quote, paid off handsomely, but
We had a small revelation that we realized that we have your voices and that we could probably answer a fair amount of those questions because of all of you. When we say we are thankful for everything you donate, from your words to your dollars to your thoughts, we mean it, because now we have this and we can talk about this. Because if they're not going to, then we are.
oh, yeah. And not only that, we have now over 150,000 comments from Democratic donors like you. And I mean, for anyone who isn't a Democratic donor, or for anyone who happens to see this podcast who doesn't know what we do, we text all of the people who are getting tens, if not hundreds, of Democratic fundraising texts a day. And we ask what they think about all of these things. And I think to close this off, I want to read some of the quotes that we came across when we put together our findings on what the DNC autopsy missed, which we'll be publishing in the near future. We're still trying to figure out how to publish that for the most impact. Actually, funny enough, the head of digital at the ACLU, who I follow on Twitter, who has some really great takes, highly recommend the follow. He pointed out when the DNC dropped the autopsy that they missed an opportunity to turn it into a digital engagement tool where people could sign up to read it.
Yep, as we know, the DNC hasn't been too quick on their feet recently. But
Yeah.
I know I want to hear more about what all of you have to say about all of this.
Yeah, no, and I know you all are eager to share too. I mean, just to preview what we have coming, one comment from one supporter that I really think sums up a lot of what may be the only thing that actually unites Democrats right now. One supporter said that Democrats, quote, took over our email and texting until it was offensive and time-consuming, and then went on to suggest that more direct contact and real listening would have been more useful. And I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We are building the technology because, by the way, this is a technology problem too. It's not just that the DNC doesn't want to, it's that they don't have the capability to take in as much feedback as they get and actually deploy it usefully.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that too is because they're afraid of using Claude or any AI tools, which, I mean, we are very careful with how we use them. We don't give them any sensitive data. We certainly do use them to make it easier to process all of
It's just me and Jordan. So and we're going through all of these comments. So we've talked about this before. All of your personal information has been completely wiped multiple times before it goes into anything like Claude. And we just have Claude sort the comments based off of topic and such to help us go through things because we don't have other people to help us at the moment. Want to make that super clear.
Oh, and by the way, the other thing we have it do too, which I think we should start telling our supporters some of the advantages of AI, that the approach I take to AI is this. I ask myself for every task I do, would it be better done by a human or better done by a large language model? And that's how I make my decision. And there's one task in particular that I found Claude to be very good at, which is taking the comments that supporters give us and putting them in the context of the news of the day. I mean, imagine having an entire press team, and I'm sorry to all the press secretaries here, except I would say you should do this too. It'll make your press shop more effective. If you're able to run what you have compared to what everyone else is saying, it just gives you a much more complete picture. And it shouldn't be the whole picture. Again, it's not like we take what it says and copy paste that. I will never, and I commit to this, I will never put out AI written copy without substantially rewriting it myself. Quite frankly, because I don't like how it looks.
It just you
It's not
can
good.
you can tell. I use it to copy edit, but I don't use it to write for me. AI is supposed to be a tool to help you, not to do everything. And we're using AI as a tool to help us sort through all of the comments that we receive. Because again, it's just the two of us. And as much as we wish we could do every single thing by ourselves, we can't.
Yeah, no, and it also, AI doesn't replace us reading these comments. It is in addition. And that is kind of my approach to all of it. It's not replacing labor. And quite frankly, if you're using it to replace any kind of human labor, you're going to get inferior work. What it's best at is doing the things that humans physically cannot do and augmenting your abilities so you can do even more. And I mean, that's really where the future is. It's not in AI taking everybody's jobs. It's in people who learn how to use AI being able to compete better in the employment marketplace. And I mean, looking forward, I think instead of being anti-AI in our messaging, we should be talking about how companies that invest in AI should get, I don't know, tax credits for offering public programs to train people on them. And there are all kinds
It should be
of
an educational tool, and that's not what it quite is right now. And we want to change the view on that.
Yeah. And we will get much more into that, but all our way of saying that we appreciate all of your thoughts and comments, and we tell you about our AI use because we want to be transparent, because you put your time and, more importantly, or not more importantly, unfortunately, because I wish it weren't more important, but in the capitalist hellscape we live in, it may be more important, your money into this project. And we want you to be able to see under the hood of what you're investing in. It's, I mean, no different. You're buying a car, you want to look under the hood. We feel the same way about this, and we appreciate all of you being here. We appreciate your investment in this platform. We know at times it's slow to see progress from it. I know I wish we could just flip a switch and fix your text messages. Really
We're trying. We really are. But as we've said in the past, we build all of this from scratch, and we want to make sure we are doing it the right way to have a good foundation. And doing it the right way is not the easy way. So we appreciate all of you being here with us through all of this and supporting us. And we hope you'll continue to support us. And you're going to be seeing a lot more of us. Don't worry. Like I said, we're back from our short break. And please, if there's anything, suggestions, comments, concerns, literally anything, send it to us. I also, every week, I go through and I call a bunch of our supporters. And the number that I call from, that is my phone number. Please feel free, if you miss me, to call me back or to text me or just to email us. And I'm here to talk. I respond to all the messages. If you call and I miss you, I will try to call you back. But if you send an email or a text, I promise I respond. Everyone who has talked with me so far, they know I respond. I will respond to text.
And on your point of doing things the right way, because that is so important to us, and kind of looping back to where the Democrats are, that kind of looping back to what we've discussed at the beginning of the episode, we've seen the consequences of what can happen when Democrats don't do things the right way and just pick a candidate that looks good. And I would rather look wrong and be right than look right and be wrong. And if something's unpolished, if something's not finished, if something's a work in progress, we'll be open about that, because we don't want to fall into that trap, because Democrats deserve better and America deserves better.
No. So thank you again so much. I don't think we can say that enough. And we will see you all again real soon, because I bet there will be even more breaking news. Hopefully know more about our friend Graham Platner.
Yeah. And if you want to hear more from us between episodes, you can follow New Digital Now or either of us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok.
All of it. We're
Yes.
everywhere.
YouTube, not Kick.
No, not Kick. We are anti-Kick. That is the only platform we're not on.
Yeah. And if you are under 18, feel free to follow us on social media. That being said, you do have to be 18 to donate to political campaigns. So if you're under 18 and you like what you're seeing, do not feel discouraged. Don't feel like you can't participate. Follow us on social. And more importantly, show your parents what we're doing and tell them that you want a better future. And I mean, lobbying starts at home.
I started getting involved in politics when I was 15 or 16, and you've got voters around you that are willing to listen. Talk to your friends about it. They'll talk about all this to their parents and such. It's a big chain and spider web that spreads. And sharing our stuff online too is so much more helpful than you would ever imagine.
Yeah, but more than that, and whether it's our stuff or anybody else's, the people in your life who care about you and want what's best for you will listen when you tell them whose policies are going to be best for you. Whether it's friends, grandparents, teachers, uncles, mentors, you may have a perspective that they don't have, and don't forget that. I mean, disagree respectfully, but everyone's voice matters.
I wouldn't have my job and be where I am if people had not believed me and listened to me when I was 16. And that was 10 years ago. I will always be there to listen to anybody who is younger than me because you know a lot more than I do at this point. So thank you again, and we will see you all very soon.